In the Setup tab of the instrument's editing panel, you have additional advanced controls for the instrument. Starting with the Dynamics panel, you have this graph here for the velocity curve. As you play, you'll see a line appear that indicates the input velocity and the output velocity. Now, because it's set to linear right now, those values will both be the same. But you can click and drag the velocity curve, whether you want to bias it towards the louder velocities like this, or bias it towards the soft velocities. Now you can drag this both horizontally and vertically to get some different shapes, and that way you can really dial it in to work well for your particular MIDI keyboard, or if you're using something with pads like the Machina, for example. You can adjust the instrument's dynamic range using this knob here. The dynamic range is separate from the velocity response in the sense that it corresponds with the difference in volume between playing softly and playing loudly. So if you take the dynamic range and you set it all the way down to minus 100%, playing softly will still use those very softest velocity samples, but there'll be no difference in volume between playing softly and playing loudly. And then vice versa, you can increase the dynamic range by moving the knob clockwise. And that way there's even more difference in volume between playing softly and loudly. So the last thing that I want to mention with this panel is if you enable the Override Global button, that lets you have this current instrument slot have its own unique settings for the dynamics that are separate from other instruments. Otherwise, when the Override Global button is disabled, you can adjust the velocity curve for all the instruments at the same time, and same with the dynamic range control as well. Next, let's take a look at the Rolls panel. These are all the settings corresponding with the playable rolls, starting with the main MIDI CC assigned to the rolls. You can set that by moving this knob here, or you can click on the keyboard icon to enable the MIDI Learn option, and then I'll just move my mod wheel to assign it to the mod wheel. And that way I can hold down a key and move the mod wheel to play the rolls. You can also have the speed of the roll assigned to a MIDI CC as well, just in case you want to change the speed of the roll in real time. Or you can manually adjust the speed using this control here. So let me turn on the rolls, and I can have it play faster or slower, like that. Finally, there's the option to have it play one last note when releasing the key. And this knob here lets you set the velocity of that final hit. So if I set it to the maximum velocity of 127, when I play a roll, when I release the key, it'll end with one final hit at a velocity of 127. Moving on to the fine-tuning panel, you can adjust the attack of the instrument using this knob here. As well as its decay. And you can also control the tuning from the coarse tuning in semitones, as well as the fine tuning in cents. Lastly, there are settings for the instrument's pre-roll here. Pre-roll is the sound that happens leading up to the sample's main transient. I'll load one of the shakers to make these settings more audible. You can adjust the total pre-roll length in milliseconds using the length knob. With an instrument like a shaker, you can really hear how the pre-roll makes a big difference in realism. I also want to point out the measurement shown below. If you're using negative track delay in your DAW, you would have it match the value displayed here to compensate for the latency. And then there's the offline knob right here. What this does is set the amount of pre-roll that's used during playback versus when playing in real time. So if I set that to 100%, all of that pre-roll, all 100 milliseconds, will only happen when being played back in my DAW, and it'll actually intelligently anticipate the MIDI notes and play the pre-roll there. So there's no need to use negative track delay or anything like that. It all just happens automatically for you. You can always have some amount of pre-roll played live, so if I decrease the offline value right here to like 50%, you'll see that I've got 50 milliseconds of latency because I'm getting 50 milliseconds worth of pre-roll happening live, and the other 50 milliseconds will be used only during playback. Lastly, there's an Override Global button here, and when you enable it, that lets you set unique settings for the pre-roll just for this instrument slot, independent of the other instruments. Or if you prefer the pre-roll settings to be global, you can just disable that button and you can change the pre-roll for everything at the same time.